The scope of A.5.9 extends beyond physical devices or software installations. It encompasses every component that contributes to the processing, storage, or transmission of organizational information. Hardware, such as servers, laptops, and networking gear, are the obvious examples. But modern inventories must also include virtual machines, containers, and serverless workloads running in public or private clouds. Software spans from operating systems and databases to licensed third-party applications and internally developed code. Even data itself, structured or unstructured, constitutes an asset when its confidentiality, integrity, or availability affect business outcomes. The control also covers intangible resources like cryptographic keys, intellectual property, and licenses, all of which carry legal and financial value. Aligning inventory scope with the organization's information security management system boundaries ensures consistency between what is owned, what is governed, and what must be protected. Creating an effective inventory begins with defining the minimum data set every record must contain. At its core, each entry should have a unique identifier to prevent duplication, a clearly named business owner, and a technical custodian responsible for daily maintenance. Classification fields mark the sensitivity or impact level associated with the asset, enabling proportional safeguards. Additional context, such as physical or logical location, hosting environment, and network segment, supports operational awareness. Lifecycle state information distinguishes between assets in design, production, or retirement, while support status indicates whether vendor patches or warranties remain active. References to criticality and interdependencies allow analysts to understand cascading effects if an asset fails or is compromised. These data elements convert a static register into a dynamic model of the organization's digital ecosystem. Ownership and accountability bring meaning to that data set. Assigning a business owner ensures that every asset has someone empowered to make risk decisions, accepting exposure, approving remediation, or authorizing disposal. The technical custodian maintains configurations, applies updates, and ensures compliance with established baselines. When issues arise, such as vulnerabilities that cannot be immediately fixed, an escalation path directs decisions to the appropriate authority. Continuity is preserved through designated deputies, so accountability never lapses during absence or turnover. This clear governance structure transforms asset management from administrative bookkeeping into a system of traceable responsibility. In mature programs, ownership assignments appear directly in job descriptions or key performance metrics, making security stewardship part of organizational culture rather than an afterthought. Asset lifecycle management ensures that governance extends from acquisition to secure disposal. Each stage, procurement, deployment, maintenance, and retirement, has specific control gates that must be met before proceeding. During acquisition, suppliers are vetted for security compliance and license authenticity. Once deployed, assets are maintained against configuration baselines that define approved settings and software levels. Change records are linked to each asset's history, providing an auditable trail of updates, incidents, and approvals. At the end of life, secure decommissioning procedures ensure that data is erased, media is sanitized, and disposal is documented with verification evidence. Treating lifecycle management as a closed loop prevents residual data exposure, hardware misuse, and accounting discrepancies while proving to auditors that nothing simply disappears. Accurate inventory data cannot be achieved by manual effort alone. It depends on automated discovery and reconciliation processes. Network-based scans, endpoint management agents, and cloud APIs feed real-time data into configuration management databases, or CMDBs. These systems serve as the authoritative record, synchronizing information from specialized tools such as patch managers or vulnerability scanners. Personnel events like joiners, movers, and leavers automatically update ownership records to reflect staffing changes. Periodic reconciliations, both logical comparisons and physical audits, validate that the recorded state matches reality. For example, a quarterly cross-check might reveal laptops still registered to departed employees or virtual machines lingering without purpose. Each reconciliation closes the loop between policy and practice, converting inventory management from reactive cleanup into proactive control. Special asset classes often test the flexibility of inventory programs. Software-as-a-service platforms, for instance, rarely appear in network scans, yet they handle vast amounts of corporate data. Recording these entries requires documentation of data flows, authentication methods, and contractual assurances. Operational technology systems and Internet of Things devices bring safety and reliability concerns that extend beyond cyber risk, necessitating tailored profiles describing firmware versions, physical access constraints, and maintenance schedules. Cryptographic materials, including certificates, keys, and hardware security modules, must be inventoried with rotation intervals and custodianship logs. Even shadow IT, those unofficial systems adopted by departments for convenience, needs attention. It must either be legitimized through risk acceptance or retired entirely. Recognizing these non-traditional assets ensures completeness and reduces hidden exposure. The strength of an asset inventory lies not only in its content, but in its evidentiary quality. Reports should be time-stamped, showing when data was captured and what changes occurred since the last cycle. Exception lists identify known deficiencies, such as unclassified or orphaned assets, alongside action plans for remediation. Spot-check sampling by internal audit or compliance teams provides independent verification of accuracy. Linking inventory records to the organization's statement of applicability demonstrates how each asset relates to implemented controls, while integration with the risk register connects assets to their assessed threats and mitigations. This traceability enables auditors to follow a line of evidence from high-level policy down to individual devices, reinforcing confidence in the ISMS. Inventory quality directly influences every other control domain within the organization. Incomplete or inaccurate data undermines incident response, business continuity, and regulatory reporting. Conversely, a robust inventory supports confident decision-making. Knowing exactly which systems house sensitive data allows for targeted protection and efficient remediation. Many organizations establish data quality metrics such as completeness percentage, update frequency, and reconciliation accuracy to monitor ongoing health. Automation can flag stale entries or conflicting ownership details, prompting investigation before audits reveal the issue. The inventory thus becomes a living instrument of governance, constantly refined through feedback from operations, risk management, and compliance teams. Maintaining an inventory also fosters collaboration between technical and business functions. Security and IT operations may focus on the infrastructure layer, while finance and procurement track asset costs and depreciation. Human resources manages identity information that ties people to systems, and legal teams oversee license obligations. Integrating these perspectives prevents duplication and ensures that one authoritative system reflects reality. Regular coordination meetings or dashboards that merge financial, operational, and security data transform asset management into a shared enterprise capability. When stakeholders see direct value-reduced waste, faster audits, and fewer surprises, they treat the inventory not as bureaucracy, but as a strategic tool. The maturity of an asset inventory is best demonstrated through its adaptability to change. New business initiatives, mergers, or technology shifts constantly reshape the environment. A mature program responds by updating discovery methods, redefining ownership structures, and aligning classification schemes with evolving data protection laws. Automation helps, but human oversight remains essential to interpret anomalies and enforce accountability. Over time, the inventory evolves from a compliance artifact into a risk intelligence platform that underpins continuous improvement. By combining technology, governance, and culture, organizations ensure that every asset remains visible, managed, and defensible in both technical and audit contexts. A.5.9 represents far more than record-keeping. It is the backbone of the organization's entire security architecture. Knowing what exists, who owns it, and how it behaves allows every other control to function effectively. When combined with clear, acceptable use standards under A.5.10, the organization achieves not only technical visibility but behavioral integrity. The inventory captures the what, while acceptable use governs the how. Together, they form a disciplined ecosystem of accountability where assets are protected by both technology and conduct, setting the stage for more advanced controls in later domains. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. The asset inventory developed under A.5.9 serves as the foundation for risk-driven decision-making throughout the organization. When populated and maintained correctly, it enables multiple analytical functions that depend on accurate visibility. One of the most important uses lies in defining the scope and cadence of vulnerability scanning. By understanding which systems exist, where they reside, and their relative criticality, teams can schedule scans intelligently rather than relying on guesswork. The same data supports impact analysis during incidents and plan changes, allowing security teams to model how disruptions or updates might cascade across dependent systems. Backup and continuity priorities are also derived from asset criticality, ensuring that essential services receive the highest protection levels. Even vendor compliance and software licensing checks draw from this inventory, linking operational management to risk control in tangible, measurable ways. Despite these benefits, asset inventories often degrade over time when not governed as living systems. Common pitfalls begin with one-time population. Organizations may launch an ambitious discovery effort but fail to sustain updates, leading to stale or misleading records within months. Another recurring issue is the omission of SaaS platforms or unmanaged endpoints, which fall outside traditional IT oversight but handle sensitive data nonetheless. Duplicated entries across multiple tools, such as separate tracking and vulnerability scanners and financial ledgers, create confusion over which source of truth to trust. Perhaps most damaging is the absence of defined ownership, leaving orphaned assets that receive neither updates nor monitoring. Each of these issues erodes confidence and diminishes the inventory's value as a governance mechanism, highlighting the importance of continuous reconciliation and accountability. A.5.10, which governs acceptable use, complements the asset inventory by focusing on behavior. If the inventory describes what exists, acceptable use defines how it should be treated. Its scope extends across people, devices, data, and services, establishing boundaries that preserve integrity and compliance. Acceptable use policies specify permitted and prohibited behaviors, ensuring users understand their obligations before interacting with corporate systems. These rules must align with legal, regulatory, and contractual commitments to protect both the organization and its workforce. Modern work patterns, including remote access, hybrid cloud operations, and third-party collaboration, demand that policies apply consistently regardless of physical location. The outcome is a clearly articulated standard of conduct that reduces ambiguity, reinforces trust, and supports enforcement when violations occur. The content of an acceptable use policy is built upon several essential pillars. It begins with rules governing access hygiene and credential management. Users must protect authentication mechanisms, avoid password reuse, and report suspected compromise immediately. Next are data handling expectations tied to the organization's classification scheme, including limits on transferring sensitive information through unapproved channels or storing it on personal devices. Software installation controls restrict the introduction of unvetted applications or removable media that could introduce malware. Finally, policies articulate prohibitions against misuse, such as harassment, unauthorized surveillance, or activities that violate law or ethics. These boundaries define not only what users may do, but also the spirit of professionalism expected when handling organizational resources. Different device contexts require tailored interpretations of acceptable use. Corporate managed endpoints typically fall under the most stringent control, with centralized patching, encryption, and monitoring. Bring your own device, or BYOD, arrangements extend flexibility but introduce risk, requiring enrollment into mobile device management platforms and segmentation between personal and corporate data. Contractors or partners using their own hardware may be confined to restricted access zones or virtual desktops that limit exposure. Shared or kiosk-style systems in facilities demand lockdown profiles and automatic session resets to prevent cross-user contamination. Defining these categories in the policy ensures equitable expectations and clear technical boundaries, balancing productivity with protection across diverse working environments. Monitoring and privacy provisions must accompany any acceptable use framework to maintain transparency and trust. Users should receive clear notice about what forms of monitoring occur, such as network traffic inspection, activity logging, or data loss prevention, and the purpose behind each. Data minimization principles guide the collection of only what is necessary for security or operational assurance. Where personal information is processed, separation between personal and corporate spaces must be maintained through techniques like containerization or dual profiles. Retention periods for logs and collected evidence should align with both policy requirements and applicable law, preventing indefinite storage that could create unnecessary privacy risk. Transparency in these practices strengthens compliance with privacy regulations while preserving ethical integrity in monitoring programs. Enforcement mechanisms transform policy from theory into operational reality. Violations should trigger responses proportionate to their severity, often described as progressive discipline, ranging from education and coaching to formal warnings or termination for deliberate misconduct. Temporary exceptions may be approved when justified by business need, providing compensating controls mitigate added risk. Each waiver should be time-limited, reviewed periodically, and recorded with managerial approval. When violations suggest systemic weaknesses rather than individual negligence, linkage to incident investigation processes allows root cause analysis and corrective action. Proper documentation of enforcement outcomes establishes fairness and consistency, reinforcing the policy's legitimacy in the eyes of employees and auditors alike. For an acceptable use policy to succeed, awareness and engagement must begin early and continue throughout employment. Acknowledgement during onboarding ensures that new hires read, understand, and commit to the rules governing digital conduct. Role changes or transfers prompt reaffirmation, especially when access levels or responsibilities shift. Ongoing micro-learning sessions reinforce key behaviors, such as phishing avoidance or secure handling of removable media. Awareness campaigns can spotlight recurring violations or seasonal risks, reminding users through brief, relatable messages. Managers play a central role by attesting to their team's compliance, creating accountability not only at the individual level but across organizational hierarchies. This combination of education and verification builds a culture where compliance is habitual rather than reactive. Measurement and improvement sustain the maturity of both inventory and acceptable use programs. Metrics such as inventory completeness, reconciliation accuracy, and update timeliness reflect how well A.5.9 functions in practice. For A.5.10, indicators include violation rates, policy exception volumes, and duration of unresolved waivers. Trend analysis identifies recurring problem areas, perhaps a department with chronic unapproved software installs or a region with outdated asset records. Audit findings should be tracked until closure within defined time windows, ensuring continuous accountability. These measurements transform abstract controls into quantifiable performance goals, allowing leadership to steer improvement rather than relying on anecdotal assurance. When combined, the controls of A.5.9 and A.10 create an interdependent system of visibility and discipline. The inventory grounds every action in factual awareness, knowing what exists, who owns it, and where it resides, while the acceptable use framework governs how those assets are engaged each day. Threat intelligence from earlier controls can inform both, feeding asset risk profiles and behavioral monitoring priorities. In management reviews, results from these two domains often appear side by side, one describing the environment's technical posture, the other reflecting human conduct. This integration strengthens the ISMS's overall coherence and provides a platform for maturing into classification and transfer controls under A.5.11 and A.5.12, where the focus shifts from ownership and behavior to protection and movement of information.